You've talked about in your book, Black Vinyl, White Powder, talks about the integral relationship between the pop music industry and drugs. You've suggested that your association as manager and writer in some senses was pretty unedifying. You said you felt like someone who's made a good living cleaning toilets when you've managed a pop band. Was it that bad?
Oh, it has been. That was probably in a dire moment after managing a particularly bad pop band. But sometimes, yes. I mean, sometimes you do feel you're doing little more than that. In fact, probably less useful.
Lavatory attendant?
At moments, it's not much better than that, and other moments, it seems to be much better. I mean, in the moments when you realise that pop is having a profound effect on youth culture or changing the way people think or behave, and to some degree, pop has done that many times over, even today, you feel good about it. And other times, you think, really, what a complete waste of time. Or what did I go to school and get an education for, just to be helping kids with an ego go out and be pop singers?
You talked about some of the pop singers who were on cocaine. You said it was a hopeless drug. It's hopeless if you're on it and hopeless if you're not.
Seems to be, yes.
How do you manage someone, how did you manage someone who has a drug habit like that?
Well, cocaine, the best thing is just to say goodbye. People who take cocaine are so completely out of the normal behaviour the normal behaviour which is required to turn up and do gigs and play. They're impossible when they're on cocaine, and the people who rely on cocaine are almost as impossible when they're not taking it. They feel the need of it so greatly. It's really the most damaging drug. From my point of view as a manager, it's the one drug I really can't cope with people who are taking cocaine.
Worst example?
Just manic behaviour, complete irresponsibility, complete lack of caring for their career or anything else at the time when they're taking it, and perhaps when they're not taking it, a come down which comes to the same thing.
Trashing property? I mean, you talk quite a bit about
well,
that.
Yes, I mean, that's gone on for years in the music business, and that seems to be a sort of part of the mythology which people, certainly in the rock days, felt was required. Whether or not they took cocaine to inspire them to do it or not, I don't know. Do
you think to any extent that pop singers, pop artists learned lessons from what happened to Keith Moon, Elvis Presley, Jimi Hendrix?
No, I think most pop stars, we have to separate these things, but if we're talking about rock stars or people who aspired still to rock music and being rock stars in the classic sense, I think many of them really think that's the right way to behave, and they want to behave that way, and they see their life in its proper perspective if they were doing that. I mean, that's not that unusual. Great artists often have a very self-destructive streak and feel it's an essential part of their art to behave that way.
But by the time John Lennon was actually killed, I think you suggested somewhere that that was a wake-up call to some people. They realised that this kind of lifestyle had to stop.
I think more of what I said, it's the end of an era. I mean, rock and roll had gone on through the 70s with its greater successes. A huge number of the artists had gone on to heroin and were very self-destructive, which might have been a necessary part of that particular art. But when John Lennon died, it seemed to be the moment when rock and roll faded away and a whole new musical era started, which was just as self-destructive drug-wise.
There have been plenty of times when you have walked away. You talked about people on cocaine and said the best thing to walk away. You walked away from being Marc Bolan's manager. Why?
Well, it wasn't so much walking away as we drifted away. He'd come to me, and I'd seen him as an enormous talent. I'd put him in a group called John's Children, who were an electrified rock group. It had gone very, very well for a while. Eventually, he wanted to leave them, and when he left them, he decided he'd form his own band. He put in advertisements in the Melody Maker, interviewed people at 4 in the afternoon who went to play a gig together at 7 in the evening without having rehearsed. It was the sort of disaster you'd expect, but Marc lived this dream that the right people in the right moment, the right feeling, everything would go right, and somehow they would call out the name of a song and they'd all be able to play it even if they didn't know the chords.
What was it, confidence? Overconfidence?
Enormous confidence, mad self-confidence. He was the most madly self-confident person there ever was. And when he realised this was just a crazy dream, and because it was a total disaster, he just went into a shower. He decided that was it. He would never, ever put himself in that position again. So he sat on a rug with an acoustic guitar, and he made the music. Somebody else banged on congas. And as he began to build up a name for doing something interesting like that, it became more and more apparent that his market was one which was so non-commercial that to have a manager, a traditional manager, was damaging to him. You know, he was playing to hippies and universities, and it seemed the wrong thing for a manager to be phoning up and negotiating a fee.
So you and he had a fundamental difference about what a manager was supposed to do. I mean,
Yeah,
I
so
remember
what
he said something like, whole point of having a manager is to have a nice pad to drop into, somewhere I can listen to music, smoke a few joints, drop some acid.
Well, that was his idea.
Wasn't that the idea of a lot of people at that time?
I think a lot of people, and I think a lot of managers might felt that the artist pad was equally for doing the same thing, but I was a different type of manager. I saw it as a business. If it wasn't a business, if I wasn't making money, I didn't want to do it. I've never seen managing artists as something which I really want to do. You know, it's just, it's a job I fell into. I'm good at it. I choose to do it well. I like doing it well. And if somebody doesn't really need a manager in the real sense of the word, it's pointless me trying to be his manager.